I'm going to skip around a whole lot today because just depending on how much time we have and how many questions we have, I may get through, fewer or more than my intention. So I'm kind of starting with the ones that I feel like are going to be the most challenging. So I'm going to start by looking at number 8. So I'm going to give you guys just a couple of minutes for those of you, if you haven't already done so, to go ahead and work on number 8. I'm going to be spying on you a little bit on my Classkick, seeing where you guys are, and in about 3-4 minutes, I'm going to work this one for you. So I'm going to shut up for a second, give you a minute to think, work. If you've got individual questions for me, enough how much I'm going to emphasize, the explanation portion, because that's going to be super important on your quiz. So I'm going to kind of write out to the side what might be a good version of explaining your work. And actually, let me rewrite this because it drives me crazy how these are smushed here. All right, so we know that we're solving for x. And so the first thing that's jumping out at me, even though there are different orders that you can do this stuff in, but the first thing that's jumping out at me is that the designated variable, which I'm going to abbreviate as dv, must be moved from the denominator. It can't ever be isolated if it's in a denominator, because obviously there's always going to be something on top. So I'm not asking you to write a novel for your explanation or anything like that, but just something along those lines. You could go a step further and say, because it can't ever be isolated if it's in the denominator, something like that. So how am I going to remove it from the denominator? I am going to cancel division with multiplication. Because that mx is in the denominator, that means it's being divided. So if I want to cancel out that division, I'm going to have to multiply. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by mx, not just by x, because I'm going to need to get that m out of the denominator to get it away from that designated variable anyhow. So I am going to multiply both sides by mx. Notice I didn't write for my explanation multiplied both sides by mx. What I'm not looking for is you putting in words what it is exactly that you're doing. Say multiplied both sides by mx. I don't want a verbal description of what it is that you're doing. You could photo math and you could just copy down what it tells you to do. I am more interested in that keyword why. Why did I multiply both sides by mx? Because I had to cancel division with multiplication. So that's what you should constantly be asking yourself when you're doing this part of the quiz, is don't focus on telling me what you're doing. I can see what you're doing right there. I'm more interested in why did you do it? And again, I don't need you to write me like a book or anything like that, but cancel division with multiplication. That's all you have to, why did you multiply? Because you had to cancel out that division. That's why. Okay, so if we multiply both sides by mx, over on the left-hand side, we're just going to have that big mxz, all one big multiplication problem. And then we're going to have the x plus y on the other side, because those are going to cancel each other out. Let me let this kiddo in. That we have gotten that variable out of the denominator. We are going to have to move on to our next step, which is if you have more than one designated variable, must be on the same side. Why do they need to be on the same side? So you can factor. So we could go ahead and move the mxz over here to this side, but here's why I wouldn't do that, because if you move the mxz over, then you're just going to have to move the y over there, and that's a whole lot of moving around, like extra moving around that you don't necessarily need to do. So I personally would move the x over to that direction. How do I cancel out an x? I cancel it with a minus x on both sides. So cancel x with a minus x. Over on the right-hand side, we now have the y. And then over on the left, remember, don't do this. This is the part I see a lot of people doing wrong. They have an mxz, so they think if I subtract an x, that's going to leave me with mz. That is not correct. Remember that these are not like terms, so you can't actually combine them. I think the example I gave in class was, imagine that's like a cheeseburger. Imagine this is a Happy Meal that has a cheeseburger in it. So they're related, but they're not exactly the same thing. So we've got to leave it as a separate subtraction problem. And then why did we move them over to the same side? We did that so that we can factor that variable out. So now I'm going to take that x. If I factored that x out of the mxz, that's going to leave me with mz. And if I factor the x out of here, x divided by x is just going to leave me with a minus 1. I'm going to divide both sides. By mz minus 1. And I'm not going to write for my explanation divided both sides. I'm going to say cancel, multiplication with division. Don't tell me what you did, tell me why you did it. Because I had multiplication, I had to cancel it with division. So we finally have our x isolated, which is going to leave it equal to y over mz minus 1. I'm going to pause for a minute, give you guys a second to absorb that in all its glory. Consider how you should write out all those steps to get full credit on the quiz next week. And I'm going to check my remind, check my text. Any questions about number 8? You guys go ahead and work number 5. So I do have stuff in the denominator that might that you might think you need to do something about. But remember, the only issue with having a denominator is if your designated variable is in the denominator. So Nick, this is actually a good one for you to pick. Because some people think, oh, I can't have a denominator no matter what. And that's not true. So we just need to look and see what's hanging out there with the x that needs to go. So this k looks like it's the only thing that needs to go anywhere. And because it's in the denominator, we know that that means dividing by k. So we are going to cancel dividing by k with multiplication. I'm not going to say I multiplied both sides by k. I can tell that. I want to know why. It was to cancel out that division. So those k's are going to cancel. Your x is now isolated. Since that k is there in the top, you're just going to make it together as like one little multiplication problem. So it's just x equals wk over v. All right, so you guys I'm going to pause for a minute and do number 11. No, I take that back. Do number 12, sorry. If we have time, we'll come back. I'm going to shut up for a minute, give you a minute to do that. And I'll be right back with you. Okay, So I'm going to go ahead and assume that no news is good news. So first of all, I have more than one designated variable. I don't have anything to worry about in the denominator, so I can skip that. But I have more than one designated variable, so I have to move to the same side. And why? So I can factor. So I am going to take that CA and I'm going to move it over to that side because it makes more sense to me than moving, even though it doesn't matter, but it makes more sense to me than moving the BA over there and then the G back over there. I feel like it makes sense to just move the CA over. I'm going to cancel a plus CA with a minus CA. Notice I didn't write, I subtracted CA from both sides. I'm writing Y to cancel that plus CA. So the CA is going to cancel on the left, leave me with a G equals. Remember, those cannot be combined because they are not like terms. So you've got a BA minus CA. So now I can factor it. I'm going to factor out that A, which will leave me with just a B in the first term. And then minus C in the second term. Divide both sides with B by B minus C. G over B minus C equals A. And what did I do? I canceled out that division. Or I'm sorry, I canceled out multiplication with division. That's why I divided both sides.
Is this the class kick work from last week or
Yes,
the
ma'am.
one today?
It's
Okay.
It's all the same. I just
okay.
yeah, it's the same link that leads you to the same assignment. Okay, so there's one more that I'd like you guys to do that I know is very similar to what you'll see when you actually take the quiz. And then I'll take special requests for any after this one. So everybody take a look at number 10. I'm going to shut up for a minute, give you a chance to do it, and I'll be right back. Alrighty, so in this case, we don't have to worry about getting the designated variable out of a denominator, and we don't have more than one designated variable this time. So, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Hey, Livia, are you talking about, sorry about that. Let me pick up where, not ADHD, it's so easy for me to get off track. Okay, so we don't have anything in the denominator that we have to worry about, and we don't have more than one designated variable. So we're just gonna do good old fashioned isolating that designated variable. So technically you could cancel out the K first that's with the X. But let me tell you why I personally wouldn't do that. Because if you cancel out that multiplication with division, you got to divide everything by K, which is going to give you some kind of messy, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just going to result in a little bit more work for you later. So what I personally would do first is cancel the Y with a negative Y. So I'm going to subtract. Notice I didn't say subtract Y from both sides. I can see that's what you're doing. Again, you need to keep asking yourself the question, why? Okay, so I'm going to cancel out the Y over there on the right, which is going to leave me with XK. And then over here on the left, since these are not like terms, they're just going to have to be left as U minus Y. Then we need to cancel multiplication with division. So I'm going to cancel that K by dividing both sides by k. That's going to leave me with u minus y over k is equal to x. All right, so had a special request for number 11. So there's actually not a lot that I need to do as far as I don't have a designated variable in the denominator, and I have more than one designated variable, but they're both already on the same side of the equal sign. So this is already set up perfectly for me to factor out the designated variable, because the designated variable is an a, so I'm going to factor that out of there. So if I factor the a out of the c, that's going to leave me a c, and if I factor it out of here, that's going to leave me with a b. So I've got g is equal to a factored out of c plus b, and then to get the a by itself, I just need to cancel multiplication with division, because I'm multiplying that a by c plus b. So what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So that leaves me with g over c plus b. So Nick, in number 9, what are we trying to isolate? Uh-oh, did I lose you? All right, sorry, I'll be patient. So the A needs to be isolated. So what is hanging out there with the A that needs to go somewhere? Yep. So how am I going to cancel out a C? We're going to cancel out C, yep, with a minus C. Exactly. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So you've got your A isolated like you need it to be. And then since none of these are like terms, you're just going to make it just one big addition problem with 3 terms. So D plus R minus C. Or you could really do whatever order you want. The D and the R and the C could be in any order, as long as you've got the plus and minus in front of the right thing.